Good evening, everybody. Back from my week hiatus. I hope everyone's had a good day so far. What's up, Hill Witch? Miss Deborah, happy Tuesday. Good to see you. All right. Oh, man. Oh, Miss Deborah, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I can't imagine how tough that is for you. Rilo. Hi, baby. Say hello. Rilo says hello. Ishmael, did you say you have your wife with you? Miss Holly. Hi. Welcome to the group. All right, so for everyone who's been here before and knows the drill, we'll give it till about 5 after for people to join on. But for anyone who's new, is anyone new to the reading this evening? Because right now we are into our third reading of Leonardo Swans. Oh, good, good. Has Holly read the book before, or is she just listening to me read it to her? Thanks, Queen. I wanted to have my... I just finished making a short little video, and if my eyes are not too tired, I want to try and see if I can get another video in this evening after I'm done reading. Oh, you did? Oh my gosh. What a great gift. Miss Penny, so on Tuesdays and Fridays from 8 to 9:30. Those are typically the days and times where I come on here and read. But if you happen to miss any of my readings, I do actually have my recordings on my YouTube channel. So if you hop onto my bio for my TikTok page, if it hasn't reset, for some reason it keeps resetting to an old YouTube page that I was a part of a year ago. The phone book. Crap, what was I saying? Oh yeah, my recordings. So if you miss any of my readings, and I've also done this for 2 other books, you can find my YouTube channel, and I've got all of them recorded and in sequential order, and they're labeled so you don't have to try and figure out the order. I already took care of all of that for you. So, all my #1 fan, thank you so much. Luca, hi baby. How are you, Luca? You ready to have me read to you? Hi, kitties. All right. So for anyone following along, shows how old you are. Um, I used a phone book, so if you're old, I'm old. So there you go. All right, but for anyone who has the book, for anyone who has Leonardo's Swans and is following along, currently we're on page 76, and it's technically the last. I'm at the last paragraph on the page. So here we go. All right. Francesco remained in Milan for the first day of the jousting contests. His brother Alfonso led the Mantuan contingency, 20 knights wearing green and gold, the colors of the House of Gonzaga. The tournaments would last for 3 days, attracting knights from all over Italy, festively dressed for the prince's wedding, and bearing the heralds and crests of their states. Even their horses were costumed, wearing horns to make them appear like deer and unicorns. Ludovico's riders were led by Galeazza's brother Gaspare, donning dramatic black and gold costumes in the style of the Moors, in honor of Ludovico. They looked most severe in their black armor, almost as if they had been sent from hell. Isabella watched for 3 days while Beatrice searched everywhere for Galeaz, but he did not make an appearance. Finally, on the last day, a swarm of masked men, costumed like ancient Scythian warriors, wearing breastplates and belts of blazing gold against jet-black clothes, arrived on ebony-colored chargers, carrying immense golden lances, the longest that Isabella had ever seen. How they maintained their balance on the horses while carrying these gigantic sticks, she did not know. They galloped across the piazza, the silky cloth from their headdresses flying behind them, until they made a dead stop in front of the box where Ludovico and Beatrice sat with the young duke and duchess. Their leaders stuck the giant golden lance into the ground and ripped off his headdress. It was Galeaz. He bowed to the dukes and duchesses and glanced at Isabella, giving her a little smirk as if to say, "I told you I wielded the biggest lance." He recited a poem of his own invention about Beatrice, bringing the bud of youth's first bloom to the ancient land of Lombardy, all predictable stuff, and included a couple of lines about his own betrothed, 12-year-old Bianca Giovanna, who sat next to Beatrice and received the compliments shyly. Isabella was not in love with Galeaz, but she wished that he had included a reference to her in his recitation. She had been the muse of many poems already in her young life, and nothing thrilled her more than moving a man to take up the pen in admiration of her, unless it was a man taking up the brush to render her likeness. I am young enough to be your daughter. I'm 37. By the time the last tilt came to the end, Isabella was exhausted with Galeaz's victories. Of course, he took the day, knocking down dozens of men from their horses in disgrace. Beatrice presented him with his prize, a length of priceless gold brocade, and he was the guest of honor at the evening's festivities. Isabella congratulated the knight on his victory and on the surprise of his arrival in disguise. "The costumes of the barbarians were magnificent," she said. "I had no idea that it was you. I was ready to run for my honor, what with the appearance of such fearsome men. Just between the two of us, I stole Magistro Leonardo away from his duties decorating the castello for the wedding to have the costumes designed for us. I paid him very handsomely, I assure you, but I believe it was worth the expense. He does seem to be able to cast his genius in a myriad of directions. Yes, he is incomparable in all things. I preyed upon him to do me this favor, not for myself, of course, but because nothing is too extravagant to please and impress Madonna Beatrice. I sense that you have a special affection for my sister, Isabella says. I do indeed, madam. My sole purpose is to serve her. Did men think that because she was young and fair she could not see right through them? The perfunctory smile on his face might have been convincing to some, but to Isabella it was a mere clue that there was more to the story than he was telling. "So you are a patron of the Magistro?" she asked. "Indeed, as I have just said." "Then you must know of the painting of Madonna Cecilia Gallerani." "I do." Galeaz seemed relieved to be off the subject of Beatrice, but not happy with the new topic of Cecilia. If you are so fond of Madonna Beatrice, then surely you want to remain in her good graces by pleasing her sister. Nothing would please me more, except, of course, to please Madonna Beatrice, because I have made that my life's quest. This man was so practised at playing the knight to ladies that his confidence exceeded at that of a play actor. Sir, there is a way that you might please me in the extreme. I was hoping you would suggest it, he said, suddenly very alert, smile widening, anticipating her offer. Now she had him. If he were in love with her sister, would he stand so quickly at attention from the mere hint of flirtation from herself? I want you to arrange for me to see the portrait by the Magistro of Cecilia Gallerani. He did not speak. She had caught him by surprise. He just looked at her. Well? He collected himself from the disappointment of her request, fidgeting with his vest, pulling it down again and again. Your Excellency, that is a most bizarre request, and a most indiscreet one at that. I will tell you what is indiscreet. That would be the way that Ludovico has charged you, his future son-in-law, with distracting my sister with your gallantry, so that she will not notice that he is still seeing his pregnant mistress. That, my dear Galeaz, is indiscreet. Arranging for me to see a painting need not be indiscreet. Oh my goodness. Well, congratulations on the length of your marriage. And I hope he enjoys the reading. It takes Galeaz less than 48 hours to arrange the request. Isabella knows that she should feel guilty for blackmailing this beautiful and gallant man, who was only doing his duty to his prince, by making him do her bidding in exchange for keeping his secret from her sister. Instead, she feels deliciously wicked as they sneak down the halls of the quarter of the Castello, where Ludovico shares an apartment with his lover. The appropriate servant has been bribed and walks ahead of them with the large bronze key to the rooms. Everyone is having a nap after a morning of riding and eating. Madonna Gallerani is taking the noonday sun in her private courtyard, as is her habit in this late stage of her pregnancy. Isabella and Galeaz will not be noticed or missed. Once in the salon, Isabella has to admit that the Duke has had the decency to furnish his wife with more luxurious surroundings than his mistress. Cecilia's apartment is lavishly done, with antique tapestries of the Judgment of Paris and other events leading up to the Trojan War. But Beatrice's quarters have been decorated by the likes of the Magistro, and are better still. That, Isabella thinks, is to Ludovico's credit. Still, he has provided well for his mistress. The quarters are large, filled with grand furniture appropriate to its proportions. The remains of a lazy fire burn to embers. Isabella places her backside to the flame, lifting her skirt discreetly, allowing a rush of heat to climb up the backs of her legs as her eyes search the room. The painting sits on a tall, gilded easel. A beautiful woman emerges from dark, spooky shadows like an angel floating into this realm from the fog of a dream. Her face is luminous, her skin translucent. Her hands are pale, her fingers long and elegant. A white, snouted creature sits on her lap, its ears round and delicate, its claws emphatically rendered, its gaze as attentive to some unseen thing outside the frame as that of its mistress. It is as if both creatures are listening to a distant, beckoning sound. Isabella loves the way the Magistro works the dark upon the light, loves the muted colors and the way that he managed to paint fragile netting upon her hair, tied ever so delicately under her chin. How does one paint translucence? How does one paint skin so lustrous that brushstrokes cannot be seen? And the hair! Like an alchemist in reverse, he spins gold paint into hair. She looks at Cecilia's long, fair hair, not nearly as lush and thick as her own, and she knows that she wants the Magistro to spin her own golden locks with his magic. He has made this woman look as if she has come from the ether, delicate, teetering between this world and the next. Isabella realizes that she was correct about the Magistro. He is in search of the soul. The essence and mystery and beguiling qualities of not just this woman, but of woman, emerge from within, peek out just enough from the eyes and from the skin's tiny pores to reveal a touch of the ineffable. What is it that Isabella sees? The power of the feminine? The godliness of the female? It is as if he has stolen a glimpse of her soul, she says to Galeaz, who still stares, though he has not seen both the picture and the woman many times. It is pouring from her eyes. That is what the magistro says, that the eyes are the window of the soul, he replies quietly. Knowing the lady, I must say that in this case he has indeed captured her essence. He must have used layers upon layers upon layers of thin paint to achieve this luminescent quality of the facial skin, and that of the long, graceful, bony hand. Madam, no one knows how he performs his miracles. After the initial sittings, he paints alone in secret. She is beautiful and girlish, yet serious. She looks studious, does she not? Isabella asks, and as she cannot help but realize that she has all of those qualities, and she would like to sit for the master who might capture them in a painting. Yes, as is the lady herself. And what is the small animal on her lap? Why, you wear it next to your skin all the time. Do you not recognize the ermine in its living state? He jokes with her. Does she have a pet ermine? Did anyone? No. It's just that the ermine is one of the many symbols of Il Moro. He wanted it in the painting. Or perhaps it was the magistro who suggested it. The ermine is a favorite of his. The legend of the animal is that being chased by a hunter, it went to its death rather than run into a hole because it did not wish to get dirty. The magistro is a fanatic about cleanliness. Perhaps he is also making the point that the Duke is a bit of a weasel. She can see that Galeaz wants to laugh, but does not. Is that what you think of your brother-in-law? I think he is many, many things. The ermine is also a play upon Madonna Cecilia's name, which is why the magistro allowed its inclusion in the picture. Gale means ermine in Greek. I love the cleverness of it all, Isabella says, no matter what it means. But I think it might mean that Madonna Cecilia has Il Moro under her palm. Out of the unearthly shadows of the painting's background comes a door, leading to nothing but light. Where do you think that door in the corner of the painting is leading? It's strange and mysterious, is it not? Isabella asks. I never thought on it. Perhaps I wanted to give her a door through which she might escape if she chose to. What a startling observation, she thinks. Would her sister have it? That was both the joy and the sorrow of the life of a mistress. You could leave. But you could also easily be told to leave. Now that Galeaz has put the idea in her mind, she is certain that the magistro inserted this irony into his painting. Finally, she says, Sir, I believe you are even more brilliant than meets the eye. We must go now, he says. She will be back at any moment for her afternoon rest. Ah, but there is the second part of our arrangement, the viewing of La Gallerani herself. He sighs. If we are lucky, she is in the garden below. She is in confinement, you know. Is that because my sister and everyone in Europe is here for the festivities? No, that is because she is about to deliver a child, though I hardly think that Il Moro would be parading her around during the celebration for his marriage. Galeaz leads her by the arm to a window. They do not approach it directly so as not to be seen. He puts her behind him and leans into the side of the window, gazing below. We are in luck. He takes her by the elbow and places her in front of him, but still aside the window, holding her closer than she thinks is necessary, but it adds to the daring of the moment. He is bigger than her husband, bigger even than Ludovico. She feels that she could fall back into him and be in bliss. Does he know how he is making her feel? Taking a deep breath, she sticks to the task at hand. Be quick about it, he warns. She leans forward so that she can see below into the courtyard. A woman with the same golden hair walks awkwardly, hands low on her hips, great belly jutting out, leaning slightly backward as if to balance herself. She is wrapped in a scarlet velvet cloak, lined with fur, and her elbows stick out like ungainly wings. She is enormous. She looks up, and Isabella almost darts away from the window. But the woman is merely trying to point her face to the sun to catch its weak January rays. Her face and neck are swollen. Whether with childbirth or with age or with weight gain, Isabella cannot know. But even at this distance, in the stark midday light, she can see that bags have crept under Cecilia's eyes, and that her skin is no longer the quality that it was at the time she was painted. Or perhaps the magistro was generous in his portrayal. He did, after all, have to please both the subject and the powerful patron who commissioned the piece. Cecilia blows all the air out of her puffy cheeks into the heavens as if exasperated by some thought or condition. She does not look happy. Isabella leans back into Galliaz, wishing to remove herself from the window before she gets caught in her spying, but also to feel his strong body once more within the boundaries of propriety. "I have seen enough," she says. Once they are safely down the hall, she asks if Cecilia was ever as lovely as she was in the painting. Did the beautiful maiden transform into the cow with her pregnancy, like some mythological creature, or did the magistro transform the cow into the beautiful maiden for the picture? Again he wants to laugh, but his gallantry would not allow anything more than making a smile at her as if she is a mischievous and evil child. "I suppose it is a bit of both, though the painting was done some 10 years ago when Cecilia was just your age. She was lovely, though the magistro performs his magic well. And yet she is immortalized as the beauty of 10 years ago. No matter what she does from this time forward, she will always have that painting, rendered by a genius, that shows her at the pinnacle of her attractiveness. Immortal. Was Cecilia aware at the time that the way to immortality was gotten not by being just another mistress of a powerful man, but by being painted by the master of masters? Isabella must have that prize, no matter what it takes. What if the same fate that has befallen Cecilia happens to her, only sooner? What if by this time next year she is puffed up with Francesco's baby and lost her figure forever? What if Francesco planted his seed last night and she is already with child? The idea that once would have made her the happiest now makes her shiver with fear. Their mother had been slender and beautiful before the birth of her children too. Now she is still handsome, but portly. No, Isabella wants to be frozen in time now, right at this moment when all men stare at her with that same look of admiration and desire, that gaze of absolute longing to know her and to possess her. This is the very second in time that she wishes preserved, and not just by any court painter, no matter how skilled. She must have Leonardo. Perhaps Galliaz can make that happen for her, be her aide de camp in the mission. Isabella stops walking, turns to Galliaz, and takes both of his hands. She looks up into his eyes, which seem to await her every desire. "I want to meet him." Ludovico had given the magistro elaborate quarters in the Corte Vecchio, the old ducal palace, for himself, his household, and his workshop. Il Moro set him up there so that he could use the immense courtyard to work on his colossal equestrian sculpture that was to be a tribute to Ludovico's father, Francesco Sforza, the great condottiere who won the Duchy of Milan by the sword. "Yet you will see, upon entering the courtyard, that there is no horse in sight," Galliaz says, thus adding to the Duke's great frustration with the magistro's stubborn procrastination in all things. Ishmael, you're going to have to ask that question again. Galliaz fills Isabella in on this and other odd details of the magistro as he escorts her to the studio in his chariot. They include: the magistro does not eat meat of any kind because he refuses to let his body be a tomb for other animals. He is so empathetic toward all of God's creatures that when he passes caged birds for sale in the marketplace, he buys them and then sets them free. When he was a youth, a rustic from the hills of Tuscany, some tiny dot on the map called Vinci, he was apprenticed to the great Florentine sculptor, Andrea del Verrocchio. It is said that after the first time Verrocchio allowed Leonardo to paint an entire figure, an angel in the master's version of the baptism of Christ, Verrocchio took one look at it and quit painting. The apprentice had already exceeded the master to the extent that he put down the brush and would only sculpt thereafter. Further, Isabella must not expect for him to treat her like some courtier would do. Though he is unrivaled for painting the female face, as you saw in the portrait of La Gallerani, he demonstrates no interest in the company of women. In Florence, as a young man, he was arrested and tried on sodomy charges for consorting with a male prostitute. That may be the one reason why he chose to leave the city. For there is no better place for evil gossip than Florence, with the possible exception of Venice. Now he is followed around by a 12-year-old beauty of a youth who steals and makes trouble. He even stole from the purse of one of my own cavaliers as the man was being fitted for his costume. Leonardo treats the little demon like a son, though he calls him Salai, which I believe is the Tuscan expression for limb of the devil. He dresses the scamp in the height of fashion and parades him around like a prize. Everyone suspects that the relationship is sexual. Everyone talks, and not in a positive fashion, about the fact that Leonardo has better dressed servants than the nobility. He is a mass of contradictions, Galliaz explains, as gentle as a dove but strong as an ox. He can bend a horseshoe with his left hand, the hand with which he paints and writes. Isabella's head is swimming with facts about the man, so many that she cannot decide upon the attitude with which she will greet him. But it does not matter, because when they arrive, an apprentice informs them that the magistro is not to be found in his quarters. He may not return for some time, says the thin, stringy-haired boy. The boy is probably about Isabella's age, but his thinness and simple wool robe set against her grandeur make the gap between them seem more than a generation. He appears nervous, but at the same time eager to represent his master to these illustrious visitors, even to appear knowledgeable about him. We never know when he is going to come or go. And when might that be? Asks Isabella. He could be anywhere, searching the city for models for his paintings, or visiting with metallurgists to discuss the nature of bronze, or perhaps he is wandering in the woods behind the castello. He loves to lose himself in those woods, he says, communing with the very essence of things. The apprentice invites them in to come into the studio, apologizing for its chaotic condition. They have so many projects and of such magnitude that it is difficult to keep order. He tries to find Isabella an appropriate chair, but she assures him that she does not want to sit. Cats and chickens wander in and out of the large open door, ignoring one another, or perhaps the cold weather makes them indifferent to their natures. Another boy, even younger, lazily plays a lute in the corner, fingertips cut out of his well-worn gloves. When he sees the visitors, he stops, but Isabella encourages him to continue. A younger apprentice stokes a furnace. For baking pots and shaping metal, the chatty apprentice offers. It also has the very practical use of keeping us warm. Windows have been cut, the apprentice says, gesturing above, so that the light falls at the perfect 45-degree angle the magistro insists is correct for capturing a subject. The loft above, she thinks, must be where the apprentices make their beds. Big clay molds of what appear to be a horse's parts lie about in bizarre arrangements, a flank here, a head there. The walls are covered with drawings of every kind, some of which Isabella cannot identify the subject, but she is excited when she sees the renderings for the costumes that the magistro designed for Galliaz's jousting match. The drawings look even more savage than the men had appeared. Otherwise, she is not certain of what she is looking at in his renderings. Men with wigs, sketches of dozens of types of legs and arms, a huge page of a variety of types of noses and another of ears, and many mechanical drawings from machines that she cannot identify. Mathematical equations cover the margins of every sketch. The Magistro is also a mathematician? She asks the boy. Oh, yes, Your Excellency. The Magistro believes that the artist must know all subjects, as well as every creature and phenomenon of nature firsthand, as if he is the very thing itself. An artist must be one with the very motion and rhythm of the universe. Mathematics is a great part of the knowledge. Without mathematics, there is no perspective, and the Magistro is a fiend on the subject of perspective. I am made to study mathematics late into the evenings after we have finished our work. Rigorous indeed, says Isabella, strolling to the one large, coherent work in the studio, a painting on wood, which leans casually against a white wall, the light falling upon it, illuminating the faces and highlighting the Magistro's play of shadows upon radiance. The panel rests against the wall, almost as if someone has discarded it. It is the simplest of mother and child scenarios, but it happens to be a painting of the Blessed Virgin with the baby Jesus in her lap, holding a flower that the two of them examine. Isabella does not think she has ever seen the two portrayed in such a manner, so casual and uncomplicated. No marble thrones, elaborate columns, cherubs, angels on high, or soaring doves of peace clutter the scene. The identities of the subjects are given away only by delicate halos. The Madonna looks like a toothless Italian peasant girl, and the baby her chubby son. Isabella wonders what the Magistro is trying to accomplish with this painting. Is the girl some Tuscan rustic he knew in his youth? His own mother, perhaps? It's an odd picture. The Madonna looks very young, as childlike in appearance as Beatrice, yet her hairline recedes like an old man's. Artists inevitably model the Madonna after the goddess Venus, or at least after the most beautiful, virtuous-looking women in Italy, or the pallid, ethereal women from the land of the Flemish. If this was a commissioned work, Isabella whispers to Galeaz, I imagine it was rejected. It is almost sacrilege to portray the Blessed Virgin so pitifully, Galeaz says, like a coarse girl. I thought the same, Isabella says. Though her dress is lovely enough, she wears a nice jewel at the chest, and what attention the Magistro has given to the folds and drapes of her skirts. Look at this velvet. It is as if you can touch it and feel the soft texture. But there is a lack of elegance to the face, is there not? Why make the Blessed Virgin look like an ugly, toothless girl losing her hair? Yet there is beauty to it, she wants to say. But she does not want to argue. Not the kind of beauty the Magistro has given to Cecilia Gallerani. This is just a mother and a baby, in a simple setting, much as the Virgin Mary must have inhabited. Surely she and Joseph did not live with thrones in their houses and cherubs flying over their heads, as she is customarily portrayed. With all of the magisterial symbols absent, it is as if the artist is saying that the act of a mother playing so gently with her child is in itself divine. All the traditional signs of glory are replaced by the simple feeling between the two. There is something platonic about both of the paintings, Isabella thinks, some quest of Leonardo's to arrive at a kind of pure feeling, some absolute truth about feeling, rather than the sloppy and specific human emotions laid bare for all to see. It is as if he is attempting to surpass ordinary and commonplace feeling for the essence of feeling. It is the expression of that essence a mortal attempt to evoke the divine? All the religious painting in Italy represents the sacred as separate from humanity. Leonardo, it seems to Isabella, is expressing the impersonal sacredness within the mortal form. There again, too, is the mysterious illuminated opening in the corner of the picture. Look, Galeaz, how as in Cecilia's portrait there is the window in the background, which has no landscape behind it but only light. Perhaps it is unfinished, Galeaz says. Perhaps the teeth and the backgrounds outside the window and the rest of the Virgin's hair are yet to come. Let us not insult him by suggesting it, Isabella warns. She walks away from the panel both comforted and disquieted by it. What are those sketches on the table? She asks the apprentice, pointing to a sheaf of pages strewn about a workbench. All she sees are wigs. spreading, flapping, and jutting about, some wrapping themselves around nude female forms. "These are the Magistro's swans," says the apprentice. He spreads out the pages so that Isabella can see the many renderings of the creature. There are black swans, white ones, swans large and tiny, swans with their wings spread as if in attack mode, swans sliding peacefully on the water, and several sketches of swans copulating with naked women. He is preparing for a painting of the legend of Leda and the swan, the boy says. So that explains the odd cracked eggs at the naked woman's feet. Isabella has always loved the story because of its bizarre elements. Zeus, god of gods, possessed of epic sexual urges, in his untamable desire for Leda, the mortal queen of Sparta, turned himself into a swan in order to appear less threatening to her, for he knew that young girls were enchanted by the creatures. The two coupled, thanks to the gods' inimitable trickery. But instead of having children the normal way, poor Leda laid 2 eggs. All was put well again when the issue turned out to be 2 pairs of twins, Castor and Clytemnestra, and Pollux and Helen, of Trojan fame. Isabella is riveted to these renderings, though she cannot rationally figure what is erotic in coupling with a swan. Perhaps the priests are right in their condemnation of the old myths as vulgar and perverse. Still, there is something irresistible about these swans, particularly the way that Leonardo has drawn them. The god-bird copulating with the vulnerable Leda, who looked stunned to have this gigantic and seemingly gentle bird suddenly taking her from behind, draws Isabella into the picture, though she knows that she should look away. She is embarrassed to be so captivated by it in the presence of Galeaz, but it seems to have captured his attention as well. "It must have been nice to have been one of the Olympian gods," he says. "Imagine the possibilities." "Blasphemer," Isabella says lightly. "Besides, I think you are probably gifted enough in that arena. I loathe to see you with a god's edge." The Magistro tells us that the painter must create as if he were a god, the apprentice offers. He's an earnest boy, Isabella thinks, quoting his master frequently. She wonders if he has any talent of his own. "Not as if he were being inspired by God?" she asks. "No. He says that painting is an act of creation, and the painter must be godlike in his ability to imagine." No wonder he left Florence, Galeaz says. Fra Girolamo Savonarola and his agents of condemnation would have his head on a stick for the likening a painter to God. Sandro Botticelli is right now doing penance with the priest for painting his fantastical nude goddesses, says Isabella. I believe he is saying 25 rosaries a day and submitting to the lash every evening because his paintings make one yearn for that time when beautiful gods walked the earth and mingled with the mortals. Oh, the Magistro does not admire Maestro Botticelli, the apprentice says, ever eager to share his knowledge of his master's mind. He says that he is a nice man, but he floats his subjects in a space as if perspective did not exist. The Magistro attributes it to laziness. He doesn't condone any painting ignorant of the laws of mathematics. Perspective is the bridle and the rudder of painting, he always says. Whom does he admire? Isabella asks. Your Excellency. He does not care to look at the work of other painters. He who paints from others is creating something false. That is another of his favorite sayings. I must admit that I am growing fearful of meeting a man who holds so many powerful opinions on such a variety of subjects, Isabella says. It would be rather like an encounter with my father, who can seem daunting. No, Isabella, he is the essence of charm, replies Galeaz, taking the opportunity to put his arm about her shoulder, as if he truly thought she was afraid. You will see. Your Excellency is too kind. The voice is low in register, knowing in tone, and inscrutable. His scent of lavender and poppies reaches her nose just as she turns around. How long has he been standing there? She sees a mature man of beauty and detached amusement. What strikes her first is his clothing, so elegant that he must design it himself. Despite the cold, he wears a short, rose-colored garment, probably to show off his fine calf, and easily discernible beneath the black hose. His vest is of gold brocade, trimmed with rosy stones, dusted at the collar by his long, curly hair, worn in the manner of a Greek youth. As he stretches out his right hand in a formal bow, she sees that unlike every other artist she has met, his hands are pristine and show no sign of labor. His nails are as clean as a pampered princess's, and look buffed to a shine. There is neither a splatter of paint nor a speck of dust on him. No one finger is a great intaglio of a ring. Oh my gosh. On one finger is a great intaglio of a ring that she thinks is a delicate carving of some naked god. Despite the immaculate appearance and the flowery scent, there is nothing of the feminine in him. He is muscled and looks as strong as a bull. At his side stands an overdressed adolescent boy, with shining black hair and eyes, ivory skin, and a little too much lace about his neck. He has a terrible, knowing look about him, and has the nerve to stare at Isabella as if she were some housemaid that he might lure into the loft above. "We were just admiring your swans," Isabella offers, ignoring the brat and speaking to the magistro. "We own many swans at Mantua." "Your Excellency, is it possible to own a swan?" "I do not mean that we possess God's creatures, but that we have many nesting in our ponds. They are very beautiful, lovely to observe. But like so many creatures of beauty, untrustworthy," he replies, looking at the boy. "Bring our guest some wine," he tells him, and the boy takes leave, turning on his buckled shoe and brushing his black locks away from his eyes, as if inconvenienced to do his master's bidding. No, I have not decided yet. After this book is over, though, I will be doing another, choosing video. So you guys will be choosing what book I'll read next. Strange arrangement, Isabella thinks. The master is the slave. Leonardo follows the boy with his eyes, which are large and russet-colored, a good match to his name. Unlike the boy, he has a look that penetrates but does not violate. His expression has a sweetness to it that one does not expect to find in a man of genius. He is beautiful and grand and retreating all at once. Isabella finds herself fascinated with his features, the aquiline nose and sensuous, symmetrical lips, slicing his face like a mezzaluna. In fact, there is a perfect symmetry to his face, as if he himself had painted it. He possesses the features of one who could play the role of the beloved in a love affair, if he so chose, but he is probably too remote and untouchable for that. Perhaps in his youth? But now strands of gray twist like ribbons through his curls. Lines that will undoubtedly deepen have made themselves at home on his face like scars interrupting his otherwise unblemished olive skin. He looks more model than artist, even at his advanced age, which must be approximately 40, more like a nobleman than any artist she has seen. "Magistro Leonardo, I am fantastically interested in commissioning a portrait by you," Isabella says, getting down to business. "I am the Marchesa—" He interrupts. "I have seen your star shine at the festivities in honor of your sister's marriage, and have heard many tongues sing of your love of all things of beauty, Marchesa." She could not say that he did not sound sincere, but something in his tone puts him in command of the conversation. She cannot name the quality. She has grown up and holds her own in the most heated intellectual circles, among the most cultured men in society. But this man is of a different nature than the courtiers with whom she has sparred. Isabella is known in the courts of Ferrara and Mantua as one who can defend any argument, but here is a man who will never argue. Of this she is sure. And yet she imagines he rarely does anything he does not want to do. "I paint only at the pleasure of Il Moro," he continues. "I am his servant. He is my lord and master. I cannot take any commissions without his permission, and, to be truthful, I am behind schedule on so many of his projects. But you have done commissioned work for Messer Galeaz, but with Il Moro's permission, no? Leonardo raises his brows in question at Galeaz. Isabella knows that Leonardo knows that Il Moro was not consulted, but there is deep conviction in his questioning look. Galeaz merely gives an apologetic shrug. I am pleased to have served you, sir, but we wronged my lord Ludovico, did we not? No, the enterprise was for the honor and pleasure of his bride, and I am certain that her squeals of delight at seeing our costumes so skilfully designed by you compensate for any time lost on his own projects, Galeaz says. Magistro, a portrait of me by your own hand would bring the same pleasure to my sister, knowing as she does of my love of fine painting. She hopes that she does not sound coy. It works so well with most men, but she knows it will do her no good with this one. Nor does she sense that, like all other artists, he would be swayed by praise. With this one, she is not even sure that money would motivate, though with his taste for fine costume for both himself and his liege, it might influence. It would be my privilege, but your Excellency must take the subject up with the Duke. I do his bidding. I am nothing more than his servant in these matters. The boy never returns with the wine. Leonardo neither calls for him nor offers any more conversation. Their business, Isabella realizes to her dismay, is concluded. The journey to Milan. A success or failure, Isabella cannot judge. She sits in her studiolo in Mantua, taking stock of its contents. She has returned to nothing but incompletion. The decorations she wants for the walls of her office are not finished. She has just written to the artist to inform him that she will have to have him executed if he does not return to Mantua and finish the job. She hopes that her letter struck just the right note between teasing and threat. These artists! It is easier to coax small children to go to bed at night than to get these grown men to finish their commissions. Perhaps more women should take up the brush. They might be more easily coaxed to do one's bidding. Stacks of documents and letters sit on her desk waiting for her attention. The finance minister wishes to spend the afternoon reviewing the bills that must be paid and others that must be collected. Francesco is a good husband and a great soldier, but he is no administrator. He leaves the detail of running the government up to her, while he brandishes his swords with his lieutenants or talks breeding with the trainers in the stables. Francesco certainly would characterize her Milan trip as a success. She charmed all the people with whom he had wished to strengthen their political ties, and when she came home, she poured all of her pent-up desire for her brother-in-law into her marriage bed. She felt as if she were making love to two men at the same time, and the idea thrilled her. Francesco was amazed at her appetites, letting her stark desires swell up the pride he had in his ability as a lover of women. If he could have read her thoughts, he would have murdered her, or murdered someone. But as she kept them to herself, he took her sudden advances as evidence of his own power over her. But thoughts of Milan gnaw at her, like so much unfinished business. Never before had she seen such an assemblage of royalty presenting itself to honor Ludovico's marriage to her sister. Yes, the house of Este is an old and influential one. Ferrara is an important state. Her father holds powerful sway with Italy's strongest and richest princess. But she is under no illusion that the princes and kings and ambassadors from all corners of Europe who gathered at Beatrice's wedding were there to garner favor with the Este family. They were there to strengthen ties with Ludovico Sforza, regent of Milan, controller of one of Italy's greatest treasuries, brother of a powerful cardinal in Rome, friend to the German King Maximilian of the Holy Roman Empire, and a host of other royals, and now tied to the venerable house of Este by marriage. What a pity that her sister is to be the partner and mate of such a man. Beatrice, who would prefer to ride all day long rather than worry over matters of government. What a wife, what a duchess Isabella would have made for him. How she would have aided him in his endeavors. Oh, the list of his interests and accomplishments goes on and on. planner of cities, patron of universities, and scholars of all subjects, collector of books, of priceless jewels, and of antiquities, benefactor of Italy's greatest artists, builder of churches and cathedrals and libraries, conqueror of women, yes, especially that. And in that arena Isabella has shown herself to be, if not his equal, then at least his match. How much would he do for her favor? How far would he go? These are the questions that occupied her mind during her last days in Milan. She wanted to test his affection for her, but it was not simple to shake loose of her family to garner private moments with him. Her mother must have observed this special connection. On the morning after Francesca left Milan, Leonora took the apartment next to Isabella's, using the excuse that since she could not intrude upon Beatrice in the days after her wedding, the least she could do was comfort herself with the proximity to her eldest before she had to take leave of both girls. It was not at all like Leonora to exhibit such a cloying display of motherly attachment. Isabella was certain that her mother was trying to act as a shield between herself and her brother-in-law. Nighttime visits were not possible. One afternoon, when Beatrice was getting fitted for some dresses to wear into her new life, Isabella boldly strutted into Ludovico's office, where he sat studying some long edict issued by the Pope. "What has so captured your attention, brother?" she asks. "A lot of papal nonsense, my dear. Our Holiness has decided to dictate to whom we must and must not give our allegiance. It is drivel." He cast the paper aside and sent his secretaries away. When they were safely alone, she said, "I have wanted to see you, but my mother has been sticking to me like an eel upon the neck. We leave tomorrow." Oh, we are reading, Leonardo Swans. Yes, by Karen Essex. "But I will make certain that you return to Milan without your saintly mother to guard you, and without your masked husband to keep us apart." He rose from his chair and took her arms. "We must be very careful. Every pair of eyes within these walls seeks idle gossip like a fishmonger's wife." He kissed her very lightly on the lips, and then invited her to sit down. "Do you think that thus far your sister is happy?" It was not the question she had hoped he would ask. "I suppose so. She is being fitted for magnificent gowns, given tours of the treasury, and told to pick out her favorite jewels, brought delicacies and sweets from the moment she awakens until she stumbles into bed, and taken for endless rides through the countryside by the most handsome knight in Italy, who has pledged his very life to her every whim and desire. Besides all of that, my mother lectures to her day and night on her duty to be happy. The peace of all the world hangs on her delight. Haven't you heard?" Ludovico threw back his head and laughed. His laugh was deep and lusty, showing all of his big white teeth and his long red tongue. Isabella wanted to throw herself upon his lap, taking that fat snake of a tongue into her mouth, but she remained in her chair. "By the way, my dear, I am on to your game with Messer Galeaz and my sister." "What on earth do you mean?" he asked, still collecting himself from his great chuckle. "Your little Bianca, adorable, by the way, is only 12. Galeaz cannot marry her for at least another 3 years. In the meanwhile, you've commissioned him to distract and woo my sister, so that she will not notice that your real wife in Milan is Cecilia Gallerani." Ludovico stopped laughing. He slapped his hands on his thighs, and he stared at her, his normally open face suddenly unreadable. "I hope I haven't made you angry." "Actually, my dear Marchesa, I commissioned him to distract her attention from my infatuation with you." "How clever you are, your Excellency, to compliment me beyond my wildest dreams, and divert our conversation from your mistress, all with the stroke of a sentence." He jetted from his chair, landing on his knees at her feet, almost frightening her. She threw herself against the back of the chair, but he put his head in her lap, rubbing his cheek against her thigh. Then he looked up at her. "I never dreamed that I would find a woman as clever and intelligent as Cecilia, who would also exceed her beauty. But you are that woman. When I think that I had sent to Ferrara all those years ago to ask for the hand of the eldest Este daughter, and when she was already betrothed, so I quickly and without thought accepted the younger. And now there is nothing to be done about it. Oh no, there is much to be done. You will see. I will send for you very soon. Your husband will not be able to turn me down. I am very persuasive when I want to be. Ask anyone in Italy. To demonstrate the depth of my affection for you, I will do anything for you that you like. You have my word. It will be as if a magical genie from the land of the Turks has entered your life. There is a reason they call me Il Moro, you know. There is one feat of magic I would like for you to perform, she said. I have visited the workshop of Magistro Leonardo. I have spoken with the man. I wish to have my portrait done by him. He tells me that I must speak with you, for he is merely your servant. Ha! If that were only true! He is his own master. But I will demand this of him, just to see your face preserved for all time as lovely as it is at this very moment. Thank you, Ludovico. It is all that I ask of you. As the idea sank in, Ludovico's eyes darkened. He used Isabella's thighs to pull himself up to a standing position, and he began to pace, shaking his index finger in the air. This will not be easy, you realize. Sometimes I want to send him away. I am certain that someone who is less a genius might be more productive. You have no idea how frustrating this man can be, Isabella. If I ask for a portrait, for instance, he will not simply sit the subject in a lovely ray of light like other painters. No, he does not even pick up the brush, but spends years lost in the study of light itself. He could not proceed, he once told me, until he comprehended the nature of light as if he had created it himself. Only then could he paint the face properly. You see the problem in getting a simple likeness of yourself out of the man? Il Moro was working himself into a state. Isabella thought it be best to say nothing, to let him work out his frustration. Then she would take up the practicalities of sitting for the magistro. His greatest pleasure is to lose himself in himself. He would study the day long if he did not have to earn a living. He is so intent upon finding the mystery behind his process that he loses interest in the process. It's a pity that no one can enter his brain and paint the contents of his mind, for I am convinced that he keeps his genius locked up inside that head of his. Exasperated, Ludovico fell back into the chair behind his desk. And then there is the problem of Beatrice. Why is Beatrice a problem? She does not even care so much for painting. But she must be kept happy. She must not suspect a thing. We cannot have her running to your father, or, our Lord Jesus forbid, your husband, with stories of how I have allowed you the privileges of a wife. I will simply tell the magistro that he must do portraits of the both of you. Separately, of course, Isabella asks. She didn't want to get into an ownership dispute with her sister. Of course, but because she is my wife, Beatrice will have to be painted first. Then, my dear, there will be no problem. That is, if I can force his hand. I cannot promise. He continues to frustrate me over the situation with the equestrian statue of my father. Leonardo got himself a place in my court with the promises of that statue. That was 10 years ago. Do you see any giant bronze horses in Milan? I understand your frustration, Ludovico, but one cannot treat these artists as one treats ordinary men. One must be very patient. They create in their own time. But if nothing is forthcoming, I highly recommend withholding their pay. It is the most expedient persuader of all. Even geniuses must eat. Isabella was so happy to have conducted her business successfully that she almost forgot to give Ludovico the expected kisses and tenderness in this, their private good-bye. True to his word, he hired a private courier to ride every other day to Mantua, allegedly so that she and Beatrice might stay in close touch, but in actuality to deliver to her long, secret letters in which he spoke his heart and his mind. In 2 weeks she had received 4 of them, each one of which she answered at a length just slightly shorter than his. A woman, her mother had taught her, must always withhold just a little bit. What she thought at first would be a lover's correspondence was rapidly transforming into a sharing of minds. They wrote of political gossip, of family news, and of pieces of art they were trying to purchase, for they soon realized that they both shared a collector's particular mania. They vowed to read certain books at the same time and discuss them in their correspondence. Sometimes Isabella asked his advice on matters of state. Sometimes she forgot all about his hot kisses and felt as if she were corresponding with a twin soul. But she never forgot that this man was Beatrice's husband. Now 2 weeks have passed, and still no word from him about sitting for Leonardo. She is surprised because before she left Milan, she took care of the matter of her sister sitting for the artist once and for all. On the evening before her departure, she mentioned to Beatrice that she had visited the workshop of the Magistro and was considering commissioning a portrait. "Would you really want to sit for him?" Beatrice asked. "I have seen him only once, but he frightens me. He is very grand. I don't like the intense way he gazes at things." Isabella was very happy to hear that Beatrice was predisposed in this matter. She had already thought the situation through. If the Magistro were so reluctant to take up the brush, then it would be a miracle if he delivered a portrait of each sister. Isabella was determined that if only one portrait was to be done, it would be of her and not of Beatrice. Beatrice did not even like to sit for artists. Hearing this verdict on the Magistro from Beatrice's own lips was music, and just another indicator that it was Isabella's fate alone to be portrayed by Leonardo. But Isabella was loath to trust anything to Fortuna, so she planted this thought in Beatrice's mind. "I do not blame you for not wanting to be painted by the Magistro. It would put you on par with your husband's mistress. Everyone in Italy knows of the painting of La Gallerani. You must not stoop to that level. You are the Duchess and his lawful wife. You should hold yourself above that." She could tell by the stricken look on Beatrice's face that the poison had taken hold. There was no way her sister would agree to sit for Leonardo. Now, back home in Mantua, she asks herself what she might do to put a seal on this deal. She wants to send Il Moro a gift, the perfect token of her affection, something that could be taken as impersonal, but was loaded with meaning. What can one give the man who already has everything? It should be small, but significant. She looks over the treasures of her studiolo, paintings, sketches, statues from antiquity. Even a bust of Caesar Augustus from his own time, cracked at the ear but still beautiful. But what to send to a man whose collections and taste outshine even hers? Her eyes scour the rooms, finally gazing out the window, where she sees the family of swans waddling along the half-frozen pond. The great white male with his huge wingspan is followed by a slightly smaller female and 3 fat white babies. The male squawks loudly at the pond, annoyed that his winter bath has been interrupted by big blocks of ice. The majestic creature acts as if his complaints will melt the waters. It is odd for the swans to appear in weather this cold. Perhaps it is a sign. The next morning Isabella sends Ludovico a pair of the young swans, a male and a female. 2 days later she receives a letter from him thanking her for these beautiful birds, who will remind him daily of her, the most graceful and beautiful creature he knows. When she writes back, she suggests that it is not she, but the swan. She suggests that it is not she, but he who is the swan, the god in disguise, the seducer of women, a creature no one can resist. She even suggests that he is more powerful than Zeus because he does not need to transform himself to transfix women. In his mere mortal form, he already has her heart. She knows that if nothing else, no man can resist the idea of himself as irresistible. She thinks upon which seal she will use for this letter, settling on a musical note cut in a wide orange carnelian stone. She presses the cold imprint into the hot wax, hands the letter off to a secretary, and then settles back into her routine at Mantua, confidently waiting for him to summon her for her sitting in Milan with Leonardo. Okay. Chapter 4. Gliamanti, the Lovers. In the year 1492, in the hunting parks and pleasure palace at Vigevano, in the region of Milan. We look like unicorns, Beatrice says playfully, trying to think of some way to pull her cousin out of her gloom. It is a glorious spring day, with lords and ladies dressed for the hunt in matching green splendor, all of Beatrice's design, and she is tired of wasting this, her grand moment, on propping up the flagging spirits of the Duchess of Milan. Surprisingly, Isabel of Aragon responds by bucking at Beatrice with the jewel-encrusted horn at the top of her forehead, and Beatrice nudges back with the identical crescent. Their horses, not entirely comfortable being so close while their riders play joust, snort and shimmy to gain distance from each other. Beatrice straightens her headdress, signaling for Isabella to do the same. It will not do, on the occasion of a royal hunt, with so many companions of noble birth at nitpicking tongues, to have a crooked horn jutting out of one's forehead. Grateful for the moment of levity, Beatrice hopes that it lasts for the rest of the day. With the exception of the morose, anxious cousin who rides beside her, she cannot, in her beautiful clothes, riding in and out of cool shade and shimmering sun, think of one foul thing to spoil her own mood. The mere touch of her silk green veil, grazing at her face and cascading down her shoulders all the way to the ground when she is standing, but now covering the rear of her horse like a tent, is enough to make her happy. They say that all the ladies of France are wearing such head-dresses, Beatrice replies, but undoubtedly they were invented here. Undoubtedly, replies Isabel, eyes glued straight ahead again, and mouth slouching back into its downward grimace. Beatrice has been noticing all day that Isabel of Aragon has tried her best to avoid looking at her husband. Gian Galeazzo, the young Duke of Milan, has spent the day falling off his white steed while trying to pick boughs and fruits and flowers to give to his swarthy young lover who rides beside him. Every time he sees some bauble from nature that he thinks will please the hulking youth, he reaches for it without caution, sliding unconsciously from the horse and into the dirt. Everyone smiles apologetically, with the exception of the young lover, who laughs without restraint at the Duke's antics. His green satin doublet, identical to those worn by the 20 lords who are today accompanying them on this adventure, is disgraced with stains, standing out against the still pristine satins and moirés of the other men. The belt sewn with diamonds and emeralds with which he started the day has long since been captured by a faithful page, after the Duke threw it to the ground for constricting one of his many attempts at garnering a white blossom for his paramour. He has not stopped drinking since the previous evening, Isabel confided to Beatrice, who, frankly, would prefer to concentrate on the great feats of hunting being performed by Ludovico's special dogs and falcons. Ludovico himself is very kind to his nephew, making excuses for him each time he makes a fool of himself, cajoling him to be more careful. "How my nephew loves nature!" Ludovico says to the lords and ladies, who try to hide their snickers, as the young Duke again nearly slips from his saddle in another comical, inebriated lurch. "You must not let it be your demise, my lord. You must be more cautious in reaching for God's little presents." Yet each of Ludovico's generous apologies for his nephew makes Isabel of Aragon's proud face sink deeper and deeper into an ugly frown. Beatrice has her frustrations with Ludovico, but in comparison to his nephew, intoxicated with liquor and lusting for a crude country boy, she can hardly complain. Ludovico has allowed her to commission matching costumes for 40 lords and ladies for this occasion, tearing the artisans and seamstresses away from his decorating projects throughout the many houses and castellos he occupies to satisfy Beatrice's desire for the clothing, which she has designed herself. Before they had departed from Milan, he had taken her through the treasure tower and selected a wardrobe of gems to adorn her riding habit. He picked out hundreds of pearls, emeralds, diamonds, and rubies, all of which were then sewn into her headdress, bodice, camorra, and sleeves. "You must outshine the Queen of France," he said. "My lord, I do not think the Queen is going to be present on the hunt," she replied. "Ah, but if all goes according to plan, Some day you and she may be the best of friends, he countered. He kissed her sweetly on the forehead and would say no more on the subject. Well, he had grand plans for her, indeed. Now her jewels shimmer in the lazy May sun, making her look like an angel in a painting haloed with God's own light. She has asked to stop at every pond and stream so that she can admire her radiant reflection, and the lush landscape of Ludovico's hunting park at Vigevano is full of such opportunities. All day long they have been riding along the perimeter of wide lakes and jumping across rushing brooks and streams, stopping often to let their horses partake of the sweet water. Each time she catches a glimpse of her grand figure in the water surface, she falls in love with her own image, and has to remind herself not to get so lost in the glowing, undulating likeness of herself that she tips, like Narcissus, into the water and drowns. Surely Ludovico must notice that she cuts a striking figure in this magnificent dress, riding her white palfrey. How can his eyes avoid the dramatic effect of her long dark hair and olive complexion against the emerald green of her habit, the color of which makes her look as if she is rising directly out of the lush landscape like some nymph? He must have observed how the diamond and pearl choker is tight, demonstrating that she has the smallest waist of any woman present today, with the exception of his 13-year-old daughter, Bianca Giovanna. He must also have perceived how Beatrice has taken Bianca Giovanna into her confidence, how Beatrice allows the girl to have all the attention when they are in the presence of Galeaz, her fiancé. Surely, taking note of all of these things, Ludovico's heart must be opening up to her. Did he not spend hours of his time adorning her with jewels for this outing? That was a good sign of his growing affection. He is polite, generous, and complimentary. Yet he treats her much the same as he treats little Bianca Giovanna, as a charming child who amuses him but cannot hold his attention. He only comes to his wife after consulting with his astrologer on fortuitous nights for conception, rapidly completing his husbandly duties, so that he can spend the evening with Cecilia, whose son by Ludovico is over 1 year old. After hours of prayers to the Blessed Virgin, however, the physical pain caused by Ludovico's visits has diminished, and only the loneliness lingers after he leaves Beatrice's bed. Beatrice knows all too well what her husband likes, and she does not have it. She remembers the way he stared at her sister's glorious bosom, but he does not even touch her tiny buds when they make love, if one can give such a lofty description to the polite mechanics they practice in the dark. From all reports, Cecilia sounds as if she might be Isabella's twin. Isabella is womanly and a fountain of golden blonde hair, and is a great lover of literature and learning. What justice is there in this horrible fact that one's husband is naturally drawn to the qualities of one's sister naturally possesses? Between the time Il Moro spends in correspondence with Isabella and the time he spends with his mistress, he has no time at all for his wife, who he has thrown at her Galeaz, who distracts and entertains her. At this moment, with Beatrice riding at the rear of the party to keep her cousin, the gloom of Aragon, from falling into despair, Galeaz is demonstrating to a delighted Bianca Giovanna how his finest falcon, Osiris, chases prey. Birds clamor and caw from inside a cluster of old oak trees, rustling the leaves as if someone has invaded a nest of hissing snakes. Galeaz gently removes the falcon's leather hood, dotted with a tiny V of dark sapphires at the crest of the beak, revealing his intelligent feathered face. The animal remains perched on Galeaz's white leather glove, though Beatrice can sense that he is already alert to his surroundings. His eyes go immediately to the trees and do not move from them. "Look, Isabel, Galeaz is releasing Osiris," Beatrice says excitedly, trying to interest her cousin in the day's activities. But Isabel only glances in her direction, then returns her snarling sideward glare to her husband. She could not put a damper on this, one of Beatrice's favorite sports. Even the sleek greyhounds and snapping spaniels stick their snouts into the air, aware that something exciting is about to happen. A flock of gray herons soars into the air once from behind their camouflage, flying with long, deliberate strides on the way to their watery habitat in the lake ahead. Beatrice knows that they nest high in the trees, and she hopes that no little babies try to fly away with the adults, for there is no sport in killing an animal before it is grown. The long-necked, wide-winged birds flap lazily toward the lake, unaware of the danger below. Galeaz need only raise his wrist ever so slightly, and Osiris shoots into the air after the birds. The pages, in their costumes of dark green on the heart side of their bodies and pale green on the right, race ahead with the dogs, and the entire party gallops to keep pace. Beatrice leaves her miserable cousin behind as she rhythmically whips her mount, passing Ludovico and his daughter until she is at Galeaz's side. As Osiris soars straight into the shiny neck of the lead heron, 4 other lords receive their falcons from their attendants, remove their hoods, and send them shooting into the sky. Before the others reach the flock, Osiris has killed 1 bird, which spirals to the ground, and is on to his second victim. The others catch up with him, each attacking a prey. As the birds fall to the ground, the dogs are immediately upon them. Before they can tear them to pieces, making them unsuitable for dinner, dog trainers are pouring blood collected from slaughtered pigs into bowls from the crusty leather sacks, distracting the hounds from the birds while the pages collect the prey. Beatrice does not particularly care for heron, but once the bird is braised with wine and garlic and onions, it is suitable enough to serve. Beatrice's heart races as she slows her pace to survey the kill. Gray feathers fall from the sky, skimming her forehead, nose, and shoulders. The falcons have destroyed so many of the herons that for a moment it seems as if the sky is raining feathers. Their long, lifeless legs dangle like fringe as the boys collect them, holding them by their bleeding necks. Osiris returns to his master, who invites his young betrothed to let the hero perch on her small, gloved wrist. Beatrice can tell that the girl is enchanted, but afraid. Osiris bleeds from the right wing. He has lost many feathers in the fight. Bianca Giovanna lets the falcon rest upon her wrist, and she whispers sweet words to him while Galeaz prepares to hood him once again. Beatrice adores Bianca Giovanna and is happy to see her fiancé treat her so sweetly, but it reminds her of the courtly and tender ways of Francesco when he and Isabella were in the betrothal stage. Why must Beatrice have a husband who is in love with another? Not just with another woman, but if truth be known, too. As if she doesn't see the way that Ludovico stares and stares the day long at that pair of swans that Isabella sent him as a present for his pawns. Beatrice is an extraordinary archer, and would like to shoot those elegant white beasts. If only they were not so lovely, she would send 2 arrows straight through their hearts. Or at least, she would turn one of the fiercest falcons on them, and watch the bird rip out their throats. Swans could be mean, however, and would protect each other with great bravery. At least it would be a fair fight, unlike what she was up against with Cecilia Gallerani and her own sister. Francesco, too, seems aware of the infatuation. Ludovico keeps inviting Isabella to Milan for Beatrice's sake, without even consulting Beatrice, and Francesco keeps coming up with reasons why his wife has to remain in Mantua. First, he was away in Bologna for his brother Giovanni's wedding to Laura Bentivoglio, and demanded that Isabella stay at home and conduct all matters of business and government. Then he made a side trip to visit his sister, Elisabetta, in Urbino. Beatrice was certain just to keep Isabella at home a little longer. When he came home, he was mysteriously ill, and insisted that Isabella remain at his side to nurse him. Lastly, and Beatrice only knows this through the gossip that flies from court to court, Francesco reminds his wife all the time that they are not rich like the Sforzas, and with the way she likes to travel with hundreds of attendants and an entire new wardrobe so that she won't feel inferior to her sister, she has to keep her trips to a minimum. The last report was that Isabella had threatened to come to Milan in her chemise if Francesco refused her a proper wardrobe. Ludovico's disappointment over his spurned invitations to Isabella finally culminated in a shocking gesture. Morose, he cancelled the games and jousts at Pavia to be held in honor of the birth of the Duke and Duchess's son, the little Count of Pavia. Isabel of Aragon was furious at the insult to her son. She fired off angry letters to her relations in Naples, demanding that they use whatever means necessary to remove Ludovico as her husband's regent. Beatrice knows this because all the court secretaries share information. Beatrice also knows that the royals of Naples would love to comply with Isabel's request, but for the fact that Gian Galeazzo is an imbecile and a drunkard, he is a disaster leading a horse to water, much less leading the most important city-state in Italy. Look at him now, losing his seat in the saddle again in an attempt to grope his beloved stubbly face. At least Beatrice is in competition with two women of beauty and grace, and not some country bumpkin with long, gangly limbs who cannot read or write. As Duke Gian Galeazzo's attendants pull him back into the saddle, Ludovico hands him a flask of wine. Beatrice watches Isabel's eyes land on Il Moro like the tongue of a venomous cobra on its victim. Color shoots into her cheeks, and her bosom, already pushed up high by her bodice, rises in a steady, belabored heave. Beatrice knows that Isabel blames Ludovico for Gian Galeazzo's degraded condition. But what else is Il Moro supposed to do? Turn power over to a man with half a brain, who has no interest in administering the government? Lose the Duchy of Milan to whatever enemy first strikes after the foolish boy is put in charge? Beatrice has no illusions about Ludovico's love of power, yet she thinks that he treats the feeble young duke with more respect than the idiot deserves. Another man might have had him quietly done away with. Italian politics were full of such stories. Even her own father had tried to poison his nephew, Niccolo, who repeatedly conspired against him until finally, after an attempted insurgency, the diamond had him beheaded. No one thought the less of her father. Indeed, respect for him grew. He and Duchess Leonora and all of their children were alive and prospering, and not rotting in a tomb in Ferrara's Duomo like so many families of leaders who failed to eliminate their enemies. No, after Duke Ercole executed his nemesis, the streets of Ferrara rang out with cries of "Diamante! Diamante! Long live Ercole!" The people of Ferrara then gave him his second nickname, the North Wind, to acknowledge how his cold decision-making abilities had saved their land. But the Belle of Aragon has no such affection for Ludovico. She does not allow herself to consider that, by assuming power, Ludovico is saving Milan from ruin at the hands of the inept Gian Galeazzo. Whipping her horse around, Isabel rides to Beatrice, almost sideswiping her. "Come with me, cousin," she hisses. "It is not a request, but a command. I know an especial pond from which your horse would love to drink." Beatrice, reluctant to hear one of Isabel's tirades against all the world on this lovely day, follows anyway, although something inside of her is telling her to make an excuse and remain with the party. Against her better judgment, she allows Isabel to lead them down a narrow path, where thistles snag at their veils and scrape their horses' flanks. Finally, they reach the promised pond, a puddle of stagnant scum. "That's disgusting," Beatrice says. "I wouldn't let Drago drink from that." Strange that nature's formation disgusts you, but the actions of your husband do not. "I don't know what you're talking about," Beatrice says, backing Drago up to maneuver him away from the poison on the ground, and the poison coming from her cousin's mouth. "Do you not see how Ludovico keeps my husband drunk so that he may continue to usurp his power?" Beatrice says nothing, but she would like to fire back that the Duke would have come into his full power when he came of age 2 years ago if he had shown any interest in or ability for running the kingdom. "Ludovico is betraying us all," Isabel says. Beatrice waits for her to go on. Perhaps after she has delivered her speech, she will be spent. "Are you pretending that you don't know that he promenades Cecilia Gallerani around at public functions as if she were his wife? How would you not like to be in attendance with your husband on these occasions, and not locked up in your apartments in the Castello, like a child in a nursery?" Beatrice is aware of Ludovico's nightly visits to Cecilia. She has no idea that they have been appearing together in public. She knows that she should stop listening, knows that she should dig her heels into Drago's sides and flee this news, but she cannot move. Do you think people wonder why Ludovico's lawful wife is kept hidden while he struts his mistress and his bastard all over the city? Beatrice whips Drago around. Her veil sticks on a thorn, pulling her headdress askew. Annoyed, she yanks the thing off. You are no friend, cousin, if you insist on infecting my mind against my husband by spreading these rumors. Cousin, what rumors? This is but the truth. You and I are the most ill-treated, unfortunate women in the kingdom. Isabel grabs the jeweled horn at her forehead. Let us not lock horns, Beatrice. There is so very much we might do together to affect our fates and the fate of Italy. Beatrice says nothing. Her father always told his children that the wise man listens while the fool gabs away. Have you any idea that your husband is conspiring with the French King Charles against our own grandfather? Isabel asks, her voice low and full of knowing. The French want Naples. That's no secret. Ludovico believes that if he helps the French take Naples from King Ferrante, then Charles will invest him with the title of Duke of Milan. Do you know what will happen in that case to my husband and me? Ludovico either will have us exiled or will have us murdered in our sleep, whichever suits him. But imagine, Beatrice, your own husband joining the French to depose our grandfather Ferrante. Is that what you want? This is ridiculous, Beatrice says. There is no such intrigue. But she cannot forget the comment Ludovico had made about her someday being the best of friends with the Queen of France, if all goes according to plan. Now, in light of Isabel's accusations, it makes perfect sense. Join with me, Isabel says. Ferrante loves us both. If he knew that not one of his granddaughters, but two were suffering constant humiliation at the hands of our husbands, he would send an army here to rescue us. We are princesses of two of the greatest families in Europe, Aragon and Este. We are blood, Beatrice. Your mother is of the house of Aragon. Who is Ludovico but the son of a mercenary who stole power at an opportune time? You can pay him back for all that he is doing to sink our names into disgrace. I must think on this, cousin. These are the only words Beatrice can say as she mumbles them, not meeting Isabel's angry eyes. She feels fear now, fear of her cousin and fear of her husband, and she does not know which is or should be the greater. Isabel's eyes are so wild and her voice so full of venom that Beatrice wonders, if she refuses to conspire with her, will Isabel try to kill her? On the other hand, could Ludovico's plans be so far-reaching and sinister? All right. That will bring us to the end of our reading this evening. Thank you guys so very much for joining me this evening. We will be back again Friday, same time, 8 to 9:30, and we will be picking up where we left off. I hope you guys can join me. And again, for anyone who's missed either this reading or the whole reading or my past readings, at the moment, I have one cat with me. I will be posting this, reading on my YouTube channel. So look for that over the next 24 to 48 hours. And, yes, of course, absolutely. I hope to see you again on Friday, Miss Hillwitch. Again, same time, 8 to 9:30. I hope to, see you all there, and I hope you guys have a great week between now and then. And, stay well hydrated. And I'll see you on Friday.